Hi, I'm Rebecca Thompson, and I am here with APPA and with Ray Castellino. And I am so excited to be here with you today, Ray.
Mm,
Yeah, you and I met a number of years ago now.
more
Uh,
than 10, I think.
it's been a while, and I was so excited to be introduced to your work, and we've created some products together. We've done some work together, over the years, and I have such respect for
Mm,
you and for the work that you do and for the transformation that it allows for families.
mm,
You have BEBA, Building and Enhancing Bonding and Attachment, your organization and your training,
mm,
and you have so much that you're doing in the world, and I'm always so excited to hear
mm,
how it's continuing to grow, because
mm.
that means that it's continuing to grow and more families are getting the benefit of this fabulous work.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. And the respect is mutual, by the way. Yeah, yeah. I've always totally enjoyed, our conversations and the work we've done together. Mm,
Yeah, absolutely.
mm.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I can just feel us settling here. It's like, it's good.
Absolutely.
Mm,
So, when I first was introduced to the work that you do with
mm,
families, I remember being captivated by this idea that, well, one, babies show their story. That was such a radical idea. And I remember hearing about it and just, being very curious and very interested. And there was a part of me that was just, okay, well, that's really interesting, but I didn't really understand it. I think I got it in my head,
mm,
that piece of, okay, babies have an experience and it's in their bodies and they're going to show that experience.
mhm. Well, and any a person of any age can do that, and to do that actually very gently. Um, but it takes being able to go slow enough in one's own system and to resonate with the basic rhythms of that happens at the core of relationships and actually the core of how the universe is moving. I mean, it's both universal and personal at the same time.
Right.
And if we're able to slow ourselves down and resonate in that rhythm, it doesn't matter the age. But it
Mm.
turns out that the youngest of us really need caregivers and adults around them who can resonate in those rhythms because that's where they are.
Right.
And if they're going to get accurate reflection about who they are, it really who they are, they need people around them that are resonating with those universal rhythms, and especially a really slow rhythm that comes out of well-regulated, co-regulated relationships.
Right. And I think that what you just said is the piece that I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, so baby is going to show their story.
Mm-hmm.
We're constantly showing our stories as adults. It's something that's happening all the time.
That's right.
But I didn't understand that piece of slowing down
Mm-hmm.
and of being able to be at that slower pace with, so that we can actually see what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. It's being at the slow pace with enough tone in it, and it's almost like having muscle tone, but not tight tension. It's
Mm.
relaxed tone. Because if we relax too much, and if we've got shock imprints in our history, and the our we can our nervous system can drop off the parasympathetic side, and we're and go into a memory of when there wasn't any tone, or there was. So or the hypo state.
Right.
So it's presence with relaxed tone. You
Right.
know, in the metaphor of how the nervous system works, you always have the sympathetic nervous system providing tone and the parasympathetic tone providing relaxation and space. And if you get too much tone, you get hyper. If you get too little tone, you get exhaustion. And drop out. But if you have enough tone and enough relaxation, we conserve energy, we build potency, we gather potency in our systems, and we've got the space to integrate our relationships and integrate our experience as we're having it in time, as we're moving moment to moment. This is a mouthful, and we're saying it here. You can hear it in your ear, and you can read it in a book, and you can even think you have it. But most of us didn't have it in the beginning, and most of us, even if it was there, we would hardly notice it because it's not very dramatic.
Right.
It
Right.
just feels good.
Right. Right. It's yeah, and I really appreciate even the cognitive explanation that it's not I'm so relaxed that I'm just a pile of mush.
Yeah,
It's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system working together. It's active presence,
yeah,
but it's relaxed.
yeah, yeah.
And many of us don't have an experience of what that feels like.
Mm. Yeah, and if you think about stress, in our modern era and all of the things that contribute to it, and due credit to Hans Selye, the Canadian researcher who coined the word stress. And when a person's in a stress state, the primary hormones that are running in our system are stress hormones, catecholamines. You know, high, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Adrenal. Too much adrenal. You need a little bit of adrenal, enough adrenal, in your system. But so he coined the word stress, and he also coined another concept called eustress. That's good stress. And if you look at the model of the nervous system, and I really appreciate Anna Chitty's work with this too, and a lot of folks that have come out of the neuropsychobiology movement, Alan Shore and Dan Siegel and those guys, and Porges's work, that it's you work within the range and within the Dan Siegel, they call it the window of tolerance. Anna Chitty calls it the window of presence, and I call it a functional range. You're living in a functional range. You're moving with the ebb and flow, not off the top and not off the bottom, but in that range where our systems feel good and gather potency and strength and sustain us, keep us young. Ponce de Leon's, the fountain of youth that
Right.
born yesteryear. I'm
Right.
still looking for it, the
Right.
where's
The
the
Holy
where's
Grail.
the cup of youth, the Holy Grail. Well, we don't have to go very far because we're all living in it,
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
we have to actually move with the rhythms that are just present in the universe, the slow rhythms that are, and then what happens is our perception opens and we actually have time to perceive, the space to perceive, what's actually in this moment, in the now. It's like everything I'm saying is not new news, but that's the core. That's the core of the work, and it's I think the major core piece that all of us need if we're going to venture into the pre and perinatal milieu. That's it's kind of like the space that we need to be with the families that you were just talking about, that the work in BABA and the work that Marianne Jackson and I doing about connections with families, and also what happens in the womb surround workshops, with adults. It's the same thing, or going to birth. You know, when the support teams and when the people actually have access to those rhythms, you know, in birth, a mom's body knows what to do. A baby knows how to birth. It's in the blueprint. So a lot of our work is you know, finding where the felt sense, where the energy of that blueprint is in us, and you know, awaken our ability to perceive it and to be in it. So that's, you know, that's what we're doing. You know, ourselves as pre and perinatal practitioners, you know, there's some essential skills that are really important. You know, the idea of pre and perinatal somatic psychology is is a concept. It's an idea, but it's also a practice. You know, we can't exemplify the work unless we've really got some sense about what our own history is and some sense about what you know, where the resources are in us, inside us, so we can have access to that and have some some large participation in how our nervous system is functioning in the moment, how we're being in the moment.
Right.
That's, you know, and that takes it takes time and maturation. You know, and it doesn't matter how many books I've read, and it doesn't matter how much I've written. You know, it does matter. I mean, those books and what I've read is really useful. That, you know, my whole left brain cognitive function is really, really important. Um, but the primary skill of being able to anchor into the primary blueprint of life, you know, the ebb and flow that is actually existing in all of us right now, is an essential skill. Being able to recognize that and name it. You know, just like in in session with someone, you know, as a professional, you know, being able to feel the tempo speeding up, just as I did with myself,
Right.
and to observe it, name it, and then do something about that within myself. You know, if I'm a parent, I was never able to get my kids to calm down, but they do calm down if I do.
Right.
You know, if I'm activated telling them to calm down, because, you know, I'll regulate better,
Right.
which is how most of us try and do it, actually.
Yeah. Well, and it's what we learned.
Yeah, that's how our parents did it with us. Yeah, you know, and that's generations. Like you know, I think I'm a generation removed from you. You know, and my parents' generation, my generation, your generation, and then the kids that are growing up now. You know, so, you know, that primary mode where the adult world expected the kids to calm down so they could calm down. You know,
Right.
how many of us told to go to our room and get our act together? You know, and what we needed was connection and contact and to be in arms.
Yeah.
You know, so as professionals, you know, the whole notion of becoming coherent in our own narrative, coherent with our own story, is an essential thing. And it's not just being able to tell the story.
Right.
It's it's being able to be in the story and aware of how we're functioning ourselves. From a professional point of view, there's a right and left brain function, and if we look at how we grew in the womb,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and how we grew in the early months and first couple of years of our life, you know, it's really clear that the right brain is online before the left brain is online. That's really been shown in the research that's come out of the 90s and, you know, in the last century. And that's really useful information. So if you look at it developmentally, there's consciousness before there's a body,
Right.
which, 20, 25 years ago in APPA, that was like, there's tension around making a statement like that. Or, now it's just that statement is ease. Yes, consciousness preexists the formation of our body, the condition that our parents were in when we were conceived, that environment, what it does, what that environment does, and how, as a being coming into the energetic field of that preconception, conception, early gestation milieu, how that energy has profound effects on it. It leaves imprints on our consciousness as it comes in. And those imprints affect how the cells divide, how the cells grow into specificity, how our organs develop, how we grow. And so we're growing under the influence of a world that is amped up and moving at tempos that's disintegrative. So, that's just coming in. And all of that's pre-verbal. It's, and we learn how to speak and express ourselves verbally, in that. But before that, the developmental needs are through touch and movement and connection and in arms. And it's the developmental needs. An infant child, a baby, or a prenate needs their mother and their father to be supported by other competent people in support of them. If our parents and our don't have competent support to actually settle and just be in themselves and be connected in themselves with each other and with us, we have to take care of them. And so many of us that are attracted to the prenatal world began our training early by having to, in the womb, caretake our parents. William Emerson introduced me to the notion that he got from Frank Lake of the fetal therapist, the fetal therapist syndrome. And I, having trained, hundreds of people, professionally and sat with, 2,000-3,000 adults in small group settings and looking at pre-verbal influences and pre and perinatal influences. So many of us, most of us, maybe even all of us, were in our mother's womb caretaking her because she was under-supported. Okay, so now fast forward that, we grow up, we're attracted to this field. We want to function in this field. We've got all kinds of ideas and we're excited about getting the word out, and we want to get the word out to that big world out there because our lives would be better if they all got it. And, and in part that's true, but, what does it mean to actually get it? What does it mean to actually, go through that transformation within ourselves so that, our own awareness incorporates the primal energy and that primal uplifting energy that we came from. That's in our memory too. But the traumas that each one of us went through overlay that so that it obscures from view and obscures from our immediate, the access from our immediate memory and our immediate knowing. So, how we do that, that's really important. And, I'm not able to get that by going to occasional workshops or occasional um, you know, conferences and so on. I think the APPPAH Congress is a great thing. You get to find out and meet, the major people in the field. I totally encourage everybody to do that. And there's a shift going on in the field where we're understanding that it takes actually integrating our right and left brain, integrating our right brain implicit somatic history. That's not our cognitive history.
Right.
It's the felt sense history. And it's beyond the, doing, work around maybe some specific things that happen to us along the way that were traumatic, so the whole trauma movement that is happening is really useful, really helpful. And we still have to go deeper than that. Because as soon as we open that preverbal door, as soon as we go into that implicit memory, there really needs to be a sound, solid container with presence, perceptive tempo. Interesting. That's an interesting phrase. Perceptive tempo. I mean, a rhythm whereby we can actually perceive what's happening.
Right.
Different than projecting what's happening. Different than figuring out what's happening. But an awake awareness that allows us to be responsive in the moment to what the real needs are. And this is actually not anything that a parent doesn't need to do. Every parent needs to do this with their children. And every parent needed it, but we're always in the place where we're giving to others what we weren't given. And I could not do what I'm doing without solid support people. I could not do what I'm doing without a team of people that I can call on any time of day. So any of us that are in the field, in the pre and perinatal movement, one of the first things we need to do is actually to sit down and evaluate our own support systems. Who can we go to? Peer support, good close friends, colleagues, professional support, competent support.
Yeah.
Not just in name, but in actual capacity for presence and accurate reflection. We have to sit down and really look at what our support systems are and how we avoid them.
Mm.
And then what we need to do to overcome isn't the right word, but to be with the forces that have resistance to receiving that support. It's that part right there is amplified by the subject, by the pre and perinatal space. Way more so than any post-verbal work. The post-verbal work, comes from developmental stages, from when we were developing speech and, actively communicating. And, kids really are not fully as big as their vocabularies can be at 5 and 6 and 7 years old, maybe even 4 and 3. I've seen some very amazing kids, but they're still, to have all of that coordination so that they're perceiving what's going on in themselves, perceiving what's going on in other, perceiving what's happening in the relationships. So you get self, other, relationship, and be able to be with our own expression and receive the expression of others and be radically inclusive in this moment, in the moment. How to do that.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and our developmental support as we were little wasn't there. So, whatever age. I mean, I didn't really start into any of this until my son was born when I was 25. I'm 70 now. I'll be 71 tomorrow. Oh my God. Yeah. So when you take all of that and you kind of chunk it down into really practical terms, what does it take? What does it take to be a pre and perinatal educator? And there's supposed to be a distinction between that and what is a pre and perinatal practitioner.
Right.
And what it is, what does it take to be a pre and perinatal trainer? I mean, those are three categories of,
right.
In every single one of those cases, it takes practical in the trenches experience in the field. It takes practical in the trenches experiences with accurate reflection around our own process. And to be professionally engaged, it takes having a professional support team. It takes having some really solid supervision and not where I'm presenting a case about somebody else and somebody telling me what I should do to help that family, but where I'm really looking at my own, the psychological word is called countertransferences, where I'm looking at what my activations are in relationship to the people I'm working with. And to take this information into, as an educator, and take that, the definition, an educator is one who brings a more cognitive knowledge about, this is stuff you can read in books and do online, and it's really useful. But if I'm going to take that message from a cognitive point of view into a group of people, their material will be activated to a person in the group.
Right.
And so what kind of containers are we prepared to provide so that it holds the strength of tone so people can have their own material activated, and to do that in a titrated enough way where people can have reference to where their own internal resources are. That's not a simple thing to do, whether one's an educator, whether one's a practitioner working one-on-one, and the whole notion of working one-on-one is called into question, especially in the pre and perinatal world. And our whole psychological model is one therapist, one client. Well, if you're going to sit with families, that never happens, because babies and children always come with their parents. They're in arms or they're in womb. So in this world, the likelihood of one-on-one, the dyad model is defunct. It's not functional. We can do a certain amount of work there that's really useful. Don't want to discount any of that. But the pre and perinatal world opens a Pandora's box that really can dip us into our shadow in such a way that deconstructs us, that disorganizes us. Mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, when we were starting to do this, when I got introduced to this whole field in the 1970s, I spent a good number of years of my life really dysfunctional. And I became a single dad at the same time. And so to be a parent and to, not be able to walk into a grocery store and remember what I went there for, even though it was on a list in my back pocket, but I couldn't find the list. And then you get home with the wrong stuff and have to go back again. I mean, that's symptomatic,
Yeah.
And then, our kids are giving us reflection about how we are, and they're activated. Those dynamics, that kind of thing that happens, so back in that day, we were exploring all that stuff, and it was very cathartic and not very well contained and disorganizing. So we've got a lot of it put together. I mean, there's so much more to learn, and the field is open and growing. But we've got enough together now to understand the quality of containment that it takes to be able to hold the field for the most part, the folks that are ready for that kind of education can go into it and have the support to find their ways through, and to do that in a way where they can stay functional, wholly functional, more wholly functional in their lives than I did then. I don't want to see people come into this field in the way I did. It's way too a mess. And it was really interesting. I was doing all of this, I was doing hatha yoga, meditation, and hours of the stuff a day. And as a single dad, learning polarity therapy, body work, and experimenting with everything we could read about, from primal scream to Reichian work, and influences came out of the East, like polarity therapy and Randolph Stone's work, and the influences that actually gave me the capacity to feel my system settle, which was far and in between in those days, came out of polarity therapy, came out of body work, where touch was there. And in hindsight, I can look back and say, oh my gosh, what was missing developmentally for me when I was in my mom's womb, when I was an infant, was that thing. I mean, one of the things I learned was that my mother went on a 6-week trip to visit my dad when I was an infant. That's why I wasn't nursed for, but a couple months, and then she left for 6 weeks, and for an infant that age, a few moments is a forever time. So I mean, it's like, that those kinds of things come up in people, and how we felt about it then and have been holding in ourselves, comes to the surface. And so if we're in an educator point of view, and we just, start talking about twin dynamics, or talking about anything that, has to do with, prenatal time and early time, and then of course birth, people start dropping into the material. And so as an educator, I feel strongly we need the skills to be able to facilitate, people in groups that way, and to be able to set up the container so that can happen.
Right.
So that material can come up in a way that is integrating while we're remembering it. Okay, now, I've been really working for decades to take what took me, decades and years to learn, to get that done into a couple years, so we can do enough so that we can make the switch, the kind of switch, or the kind of change in our lives, so that at least when we're working, we're integrating our experience. And maybe when we're in our personal lives and our interpersonal relationships, we're actually valuing the quality of the space it takes to integrate our experience as we're living it right now.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a big thing to come into this field, and it's a bigger thing than most of us would realize. It's also why I do the womb surround workshops, and it's small groups with 7 people. I think it's one of the most valuable experiences a person can have when they're coming into this field, because it's a contained field. It's long enough so that we can actually get the felt sense of it and take the changes we make in that time home. That's, one vehicle. Then the professional training, it takes a couple years, 2.5 years or so, to really get the felt sense. It's the foundation training, right? But you'd think, well, after 2.5 years, I should have the credentials to be able to. But, it's an ongoing process. None of us are through learning. And, I remember remember when I was young, going into education and going into music education, 7th and 8th grade level, the United States, California. I wanted to change that educational system.
Mm.
I wanted to make the experience of those kids for those kids so that it was real for them, so that they were engaged. And I had no idea what I was taking on. And I broke. Took 4.5 years, and I had a breakdown. I couldn't stay in it.
Yeah.
And my ideals were bigger than what I could deliver, and my ideals were way bigger than the support I had.
Right.
So there's some real foundation pieces that any of us coming into this field need, and it's really doable. This is not daunting. I mean, it can feel daunting, and to maybe hear me talk about it might feel daunting, but it's really doable. And and there's enough of us around, out of my trainings and others, and that it's a growing field, but it takes practical, in the trenches experience in solid containers for training and experience, and and support, so that we can integrate that material into our lives. And this movement is challenging the educational system. It questions everything about it. The worst thing we can do with children is put them in desks and sit them down and have them look at computers. That's the worst thing we can do with them. I got some charge on that.
A little bit.
Best thing we can do with them is take them into the woods and climb rocks and put our feet in streams of water and watch the harrier hawks fly by, and the red tails, and an occasional eagle, and be in nature and be together. We need that.
Yeah.
So, at any rate, I see. I think the energy feels settling. Anything else you want to ask me? Are we getting the topics that you have to cover there?
So I know that one of the options, especially for those who are really just beginning, is the embodiment seminars.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those and how
Oh,
those might
sure.
be a way to begin?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for years, I've been developing, for at least 2 decades now, I've been developing like introductory workshops.
Yeah.
And these introductory workshops, at their core, have the intention to provide contained experience. So a person can, get a sense of the field, get a sense of the principles that guide the field,
Mm-hmm.
and get a felt sense inside themselves what it is to move into that material and actually feel it in our bodies, and to have some opening into that experience. I've done, I don't know how many workshops, but I've been doing them for decades, and in Europe and the United States and in Asia and Mexico and Canada, and so in a lot of places I've tried these things out, and I love them. I've worked with groups from like 10 to 60, 70 people, and 400 people, one time, and it's very cool. I mean, I love working with groups like that. And to see APPPAH take on the notion of doing an embodiment workshops, I think is really great. And and the core notion is to support the transition from left brain knowing, cognitive knowing, to including experiential base, and more importantly than just including that experiential base, not to just go in and open all the trauma up, but to experience some integrative right left brain. Sense of being That's the part right there. So the embodiment workshop, and the way I perceive them, and the way like Tara Blasco, Mary Jackson, and I, we got to do one of those, a month or two ago, and it was really fun. It was really, really fun. And from my point of view, the skills that it takes to do those workshops are the ability to be with the material, be able to be with the group. We had, in that group, we had 21, I think, people in it, 20, and we had assistants and so on. But to be with those folks and to be able to move with the group in harmonic resonance, which is not something I've talked about here, but to establish a harmonic resonance, just like one would do in a family, where the system of the field of that group becomes co-regulated. And so how to facilitate that, but so that the folks can come into a field that has the felt sense of a co-regulation, and in somewhat similar ways that we think about a co-regulation between mom and baby, baby and mom. The old notion is that the adult regulates the child. And so if the adult is saying, if I'm relaxed and easy, my kid's going to be relaxed and easy. Well, in part that's true, but the reality of it is, and this is borne out in the research, and especially all the skin-to-skin work immediately after birth, that the mother's system is regulated as much as the baby's system is regulated.
Right.
The baby's system is helping the mother as much as the mother's system is helping the babies. It's a co-regulated system. And it's something that is one of the reasons why I started working with small groups of people in the womb surround workshops. So we work to create a co-regulated system energetically, and to move in and out of that space enough so that the people in the experience can come out of it with the sense of that integration. So the notion of embodiment is to, yes, come into our bodies individually, but to move in a field that's embodied and in relationship. And we know from all the work with the nervous system that in prenates, infants, and children, their systems grow in relationship. They grow in relationship, and there's developmental needs along the way, like safe human touch. It's necessary for a co-regulated system to happen. So we cultivate those experiences in the Womb Surround workshop. And in the embodiment workshops, what we do is we work to cultivate the felt sense of that resonance, the field of that resonance, to give recognition to it. That's a term that Anna Chitty uses. Give recognition to it, to name it, and to develop the felt sense of it in a group. And to do that in the richness of experiential exercises and discussion, and so that what we're learning is coming out of our experience. We're discovering it because it's already in us. And then to give enough cognitive framework to that so that both right and left brain works together. Most of us were either left brain or were right brain. I ended up being more on the right brain end of it. And, in my own personal work, I've had to really work, to bring on the left brain more so that I can, have a coherent conversation with you right now.
Right.
Not so easy. That's a whole other thing. It's not easy to give words to pre-verbal experience, which is another, goal of the professional training I do. So folks can come in with a lot of professional experience, and they've been counseling for that many years, and then they come into, and oh my God, what is this somatic stuff?
Right. We don't learn about it.
And the term APPPAH, Association for Pre and Perinatal Psychology and Health is, I think, not an accurate term.
Mm.
It's really somatic psychology. The somatic need developmentally precedes the psychological needs, but in our development, but it's not one or the other. The adult world has to really, if we're going to grow in an optimal way, has to have both soma and psycho
Mm-hmm. Yep.
working together, right, left brain working together across that corpus callosum,
That's right.
engaged hippocampus, a quiet,
Amygdala.
it needs that, and because the awareness of this stuff doesn't happen at the peak of a cathartic experience. It actually happens in the quiet space between words. It happens more in dynamic stillness. That's where the integration happens. So so we can study the trauma and get the trauma and comprehend the trauma and all of that, but the resource is in the quiet space in between all of it. I love the notion of doing these embodiment workshops, and to understand that that's just like taking the edge off the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
It's opening the experience, and my hope is the people that do that come into the APPPAH educator movement really understand that they're if they've got a lot of experience in the field and they're going back and they're adding that to something that's in their resume. I think that's great. They've got experience with it. It's a lot of folks, but if you're just coming into the field, understand that you're not just opening a back door to something, and you're not just opening a regular sized front door. I mean, you're opening up something larger than barn doors.
Right.
So the horses and the cows can move in and out.
Right. Right.
It's you're opening yourself to a world that actually gives us the potential to become so much more whole and so much more complete in ourselves. And so much so that, when we go to work and we finish at the end of the day, we may be tired, but we're not drained. We're tired and uplifted.
Mm.
What a job. I love my work. I do not see myself retiring. It's hard for me to think of that word. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I maybe will do less, but today it's I'm in all of that full bore, and it's happening because of the guidance and the support I've been given to do my best to go at a tempo that integrates the experience I'm having moment to moment, and by not getting there before I get there. So it's fun connecting with you again, Rebecca. And
So great connecting with you too, Ray, and just stepping back into that world even a little bit more, and it's inspiring, and it's I mean, I can see how much this has changed the way that I work, and it's changed the way that I am with my clients, and it's profound. It's really, really profound. And so thank you for your
most
time.
welcome. Yeah, most
Thank
welcome.
you for your expertise and for sharing with us just that little glimpse, because it truly is a very small glimpse of the work that you're doing.
Every time we open the door,
It's a barn door. It's a big barn door, right?
more.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the heavens opening or something. I don't know.
Right. Totally. So thank you so much. And if people are looking to connect with you, how can they find you?
You can go to my website, castellinotraining.com. Go to beba.org. Those two websites, all the materials there. And if they're interested in Womb Surround workshops or trainings and stuff, then, you can be in touch with Sandra or be in touch with the APPPAH folks. The APPPAH is organizing the embodiment workshops that we're doing.
Okay.
We've got Tara, Mary, and I are for next year, 2016. I think we've got room for 3 or 4 of them on the books. That will probably happen in and around Ojai. And we've got a full training that we're starting next year, either in May or August. We're not sure yet that's a 2.5-year professional training, and there's prerequisites for it. So, and yeah.
All right.
So
Thank
that's
you.
how. Okay.
That's how they can get in
Thank you
touch
very
with
much.
you. And thank
Okay.
you so much, Ray.
You're very welcome.
Have a wonderful day.
You too, and everybody else that's watching this video.
Absolutely.
Mm.